Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. Okay, today is a little bit of a messy Monday. We've got updates for you on the daily headlines of the true crime that happened breaking over the weekend, and then what has happened within the last 24 hours as well. Major updates on the 8 passengers, Ruby, Frankie, Jody Hillebrand case. We've got updates on the day 11 of the Daniello Cavalcante case, the manhunt that's taking place in Pennsylvania. And we've got sort of a celebrity crossover case that is a throwback to a murder, but which involves a SA case of Danny Masterson that he just got sentenced. But I don't know about you, but there were some strange letters written by Milo Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. And I may have a reason why, especially Ashton, would be writing letters, even though it from a PR stance would be really bad for him. Stick around for that. Oh, and if you're part of the True Crime Grapevine Partners in Crime Book Club, I'll tell you what's going on in my block party book. A little update on that. Might be spoilers. If you're reading the book and you don't want to know what's happening, I'm going to be updating you on how far as I go through it. So I'll be telling you what's happening. So always at the end of my videos. So if you're not interested in any spoilers in books and you're interested in reading The Block Party by Jamie Day, don't watch the end. All right. So what the big updates or the new updates for the Jody Hillebrand, Ruby Frankie case? A number of things came out. So Friday, I told you that the court had said they were not eligible for bail at this time, that they would remain in custody, and that their hearings would be, I believe, September 15th and the 21st. Well, if you've got some drinks, grab them, because that night, both women had medical issues. And one was taken, I believe, to a hospital, and one was taken to the medical unit inside the same jail. So Jody Hillebrand apparently suffered what they called a life-threatening, that's quotes, medical emergency. So did she have a stroke? And she's 54, I believe, and Ruby isn't, like 41 or 2. I don't know. Ruby's in her 40s. Jody's in her 50s. Not really the time, I mean, under a lot of stress, but I'm thinking it might be, and this is alleged, this is allegations and shade, just my speculation. Did she try to unalive herself? I don't know, but they said life-threatening. Now, maybe she had a aneurysm, which is a blood clot in your brain. Maybe she had an actual stroke. We don't know. Maybe she had some malachite. Maybe, she took Alex Cox's way out of things. We don't know. So, but I'm sure we'll find out. Well, maybe we won't because of HIPAA laws. But then Ruby also was put into the jail's medical ward. Again, allegations and shade, allegedly. She is on a hunger strike. Now, I don't know about you, but isn't that a little ironic that Miss Ruby is going to starve her way? She thinks she's going to starve her way out of this? I know. Eating disorders. I don't know if YouTube doesn't like those words. EDs, which sounds like something else. Not funny, not making fun of those, and very serious. And it seems like she had an issue using food. If you look at her, she seemed a bit underweight herself. So maybe that's one thing she used to control herself. We don't know. But I mean, and she could have just been stressed, but it was alleged like it was some sort of hunger strike, which again, considering what she's in jail for, seems a little, I don't know. What do you think? Put it in the comments. Speaking of which, like, subscribe, that'd be great. If you're watching this. All right. The other thing, Jody's niece, Jessie Hillebrand, spoke on the Mormon Stories podcast with John Delaney. I believe I mentioned that before. Now, a lot of the other YouTubers on big channels are picking up, and I don't know if she's going to also speak to them, but John Delaney very nicely allowed everybody to use like those clips of what Jessie said. Jessie alleges, again, allegations, that when she was 15, so she's now a 20-something, that she was left with her Aunt Jody. And yeah, she was bound. She was duct taped. She was told that the devil was in her. She was told that everything that Jody was doing was for her own good because, you know, she was bad. She had the devil in her. And Jody had Jesus working through her. Again, in overly when religiosity becomes a religious delusions, as we know in the Lori Vallow case, people get some weird ideas about how they need to, you know, get the devil out of, especially out of children. It's really sick, but I don't think it's that uncommon when people are aggravated with the normal way children act, especially children that are really young, anybody hyperactive, anybody on the spectrum, that they can see them as, in fact, people on the spectrum could be considered, in old-fashioned days, they would have been considered like mentally unfit, different in a way that would, you know, depending on the severity on the spectrum, put up in the attic and not be shown to people would have been embarrassed, or people would have thought the devil was in them. They would have thought they were evil, before people understood mental illness, right? Not that autism is not a mental illness. It is a neuro difference. But I'm saying people back then would have seen that as that. And maybe I heard one of her children, in fact, the one who was most severely disabled, maybe on the spectrum, I don't know. But the fact that Jody's niece was also isolated, kept in a basement, kept away from people, told that she wasn't supposed to speak to other people, that she was bad. She also, like a 911 call was released. And I think since the last time I spoke to you on Friday, and more of it, the whole entire 911 call. And the man who lived 2 doors down from Jody Hillebrand states that the little boy, and you can hear his little voice saying, "It's my fault." Like, that is some sick, twisted mind fuckery to do that to a child. And Jody's niece describes the very same experience. And I found her highly credible because she has no reason to say this. And she was quite well spoken. And it really seems like Jody Hillebrand feels that she is being not only driven by God, but she is inspired by God. So this is the other big, huge thing that I think we can explain Ruby's outburst in court. So if you remember on Thursday, Ruby Franke had an outburst in which she said crazy things about one of her children. And it seems to be the child that was found by the neighbor, the one who escaped. And why Jody said the only thing she would say is, keep those children away from other children. And it wasn't to protect those children. It's because Jody believes that they have the devil within. Jody seems to believe, allegedly, that they are evil, which goes along with Ruby's statements of 2 of her kids got together to hurt other children. And there were 20 kids that have been abused. And the one kid started looking when he was 3. All of that doesn't make a lot of sense until you put this into a perspective that Jessie provided, which was, she said her aunt believed in and read the same book as some very fundamentalist, radicalized, not typical Mormons, this book about visions. I think it's Visions of Glory. It was the book that Lori Vallow had. She was reading it at the pool with Chad when she was served with papers. And Visions of Glory goes back, it is based in the fundamentalist beliefs of the Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon religion, who believed that anybody could be a prophet, that anybody could have a direct line and receive visions and revelations. Now, throughout history, it turned into, well, not everybody, because, he had to control the people, only certain people like him and people he said. But, everybody took that to heart. And a lot of people, especially these fundamentalist schisms or splinter groups, start with them saying, no, I'm a prophet too. I'm the prophet, and God speaks to me. I receive revelations. And as we heard, Chad received revelations, and Lori. So apparently Jody received revelations about Jesse having a certain, shall we say, procedure to get rid of an unwanted pregnancy. And this girl hadn't even had intercourse. And Jody's like, no, I know, because I had a dream. I had a revelation. You're lying. She knew that Jesse was bad because she had a revelation. She had dreams. So people, I think I would bet, I don't really bet, but if I'd bet a lot of money that Jody Hillebrand told Ruby Franke that her 12-year-old son had been looking at corn since he was 3 years old, that she saw it. It was revealed to her. I bet all of the 20 victims were revealed to her. I bet all of this was revealed to her. And then they abused those children based on Jody's revelations. Now, children act up. If you look at the 8 Passengers videos, you can see the baby girl she's like sassy, and and she grew up on that show. Apparently her gender reveal was one of the first videos. So she's kind of like a star on the show. She's the one that got her lunch. I think she also was the one who didn't wake up in time in preschool and was made to not go to school and was told it's your fault because you couldn't wake yourself up at like 4. So these children might have had like what I call personality plus and lots of energy and some sassiness. And maybe because they were number 6, talked back a little bit. And and Ruby was aggravated by she saw them, especially her 2 youngest, who were the ones she took Christmas from, that they were entitled. And what she meant was they had a sense of self-worth. And again, Jessie Hillebrand, the niece of Jody, said that Jody specifically highlighted and took away anything that she had that was of self-worth. She had long, beautiful blonde hair that she was proud of, and Jody cut it. She did really well at school, and she felt good about that. It was part of her ego, her self-worth, and Jody took her out of school. So when you reflect back on 3 years ago, so we have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. So when the 10-year-old was about 7, first grade, and when the 12-year-old was about 9, Jody Hillebrand started working with the family for the oldest boy who was having problems acting out, which is very common with children who are overly controlled. They do start acting out. So they sent him to that wilderness camp. But then she worked on their marriage. So the oldest kid, the oldest boy, ends up leaving. The marriage falls apart. The dad apparently goes. So this is all within 3 years. And the 2 smallest got Christmas taken away because they were entitled. They could not control themselves. They didn't have humility. Oh my God. And Jody Hillebrand thinks that curiosity means to be humble. I mean, the more you hear about her philosophies, they're crazy. The Hidden True Crime had a live with the host, who is Lauren Matthias, a journalist, but her husband is Dr. John. Matthias, and he's a forensic psychologist. And it was very interesting what he had to say about this interaction between, like, and similarity between Jody being like a Chad Daybell, like all of us were kind of saying, but he agreed that it seems like something about Jody guiding Ruby made Ruby even more fundamentalist and more radicalized. And one of the similarities that they found was that Jody Hillebrand had spoken to a therapist like group, but it wasn't through a certified therapist, like an association. It was through a religious association with this guy, Tom Harrison. I think his name is Tom. Yeah, Tom Harrison, who is involved in the Visions of Glory book. So these people who believe revelations and that the therapy has to be like breaking down the ego, breaking down the person, which is the same thing as cult. That's how you indoctrinate somebody into a cult. If you haven't watched Stephen Hansen on any of the podcasts, Stephen Hansen is a cult expert. He was in the Moonies, and the same techniques that break down a person so that you can build them up in your vision is the same things, allegedly, that Jody Hildebrandt seems to be using, and what her niece Jessie Hildebrandt described. And it all tracks with what Ruby Franke was allowing her to do to her two kids. And I trust and believe, you guys, that the allegations are all from revelations that Jody had and have nothing to do. And I bet the one person that stood up in that group with their lawyer is part of their little group. 100%, I would guess. Because no way a real lawyer stands up in the middle of court and it's like, hey, my client would like to talk about abuse in the middle of somebody else's court. I mean, that's not, lawyers know that's not how that works. So anyways, let me know what you think. I thought that Dr. John Matthias and others who were talking about this case, especially with the Mormon Stories podcast with Jessie, too many similarities for it not to be basically the same thing. Only she was 15 when this started, and these little kids, 12 and 10. And right now, I was just watching Law and Crime Network was talking to a lawyer about, could these kids, if she's lying about them, could they eventually civilly sue her? And the answer is yes, if she made accusations like that in court. Anyways, all right, case number 2 for the evening. Take a sip. We're to the PA convict. He's still on the run. What we know is that I think it was a gambling, some sort of debt in 2017 in Brazil that I always am going to have trouble say his name. Danilo Cavalcante, unalived somebody in Brazil, left on apparently on a ship through Puerto Rico, and then came to the United States, where he met his girlfriend and then unalived her in front of her kids, which he was sent to prison for life in Pennsylvania. And that's where he escaped from right before he was going to go to the state pen. He was the one that they say crab walked, but crab walks when you're backwards. It was like Superman, legs on one side, arms on the other, up a hallway, outside hallway, onto a roof, and escaped. And the guard was fired because he was gone over an hour and everybody missed him. So in 2017, apparently in Brazil, he went into the rainforest and was also gone for a long period of time until he eventually got on a ship to Puerto Rico. So this guy can survive. But what do we know that's new? Well, he's going to have a hard time because it's not just Amazon. It's not just forest. He has to go through forested areas, but also residential areas. And there's trail cams. And so he was in the Lockwood Botanical Gardens last time we spoke on Friday. he did manage to get out. How? Well, there was a dairy near the gardens. And then one night, somebody at the dairy, somebody at the dairy had left their keys in the car. Now, if you're in an area where there's an escaped convict, like within an hour of it, don't leave your keys in the car. But, if you're living in a rural area, everybody I know who grew up in a small rural town where I lived left their keys in the car. A lot of them farmers. People just do it. They're out in the country. They trust everybody. It's small town. Bad idea. So he got this white truck. In fact, the YouTuber, the guy on Twitter, X, who was doing a lot of live streams that YouTube was using, the Tim K guy, he actually has, he sort of sees the van leave, but nobody knows that that guy's driving. They saw him later on a cam at a corner, but so he went to, I don't know if this was before or after, he tried to contact a friend, a work guy, not a friend, an associate, and they apparently were gone. They had it on their cam, their ring cam that he had there. They gave it to the police at 10, but the police were like, okay, he's obviously got out of the perimeter. He's away from Lockwood. Then they thought, no, that's not him, because he was clean shaven. Now, I don't know where he shaved. I don't know, at the dairy. It's very confusing where he was able to shave, and he doesn't look like he looked in the pictures. Then they ran the photos from the ring camera through some, AI app that looked at facial recognition app. And guess what? Even though our eyes couldn't see it, that's why, they have these computerized programs, especially in places where you have to get into work in a lab or something where there's very sensitive data, because our visual eyes can be tricked. Whereas AI is looking at, bone structure. It was him. He looks very different. Now he's clean shaven, and he has this van, and they were behind. I don't know if he went to the friend's house first and then got the van, but they missed a 2-hour window of knowing that he was outside the perimeter, because they didn't believe the ring cam and the person who said, no, I know him, that's him. So he got in the van, traveled west. Now he's closer to, and then they found the van this morning, no gas. So he doesn't have gas, and he leaves the van. So he doesn't have too much help. They think he's headed for the Philadelphia area. He can blend in better. I don't know where he's headed next. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, heads up. He's very, very short is what's going to be the telltale sign. And he's probably going to smell, I'd guess, because he hasn't bathed. Okay. His sister is being deported. Why, you ask? Are they just being? Well, she overstayed her visa. And more importantly, she refused to say that she wouldn't help her brother. She just refused. So she's going back to Brazil. Which I hope that's not just punitive. But, the thing is, why wouldn't you lie and just go, yeah, I'll help you? And I mean, what a weird thing to just whatever. So she's very loyal sister. They say he has work friends. They're watching everybody. They don't have a perimeter because now he's headed towards an urban area, and you can't put a perimeter around a city. So they're going to be watching, obviously, all the cameras everywhere. I think they're doing the best they can. These things can last weeks and weeks. So we're not even to 2 weeks quite yet. So it's not horrible. It's just very frightening. Obviously, because this guy's a murderer, and it's horrible for the victim's family because, they got this conviction, and then, he's out. So that is, they're probably hiding the kids there. It's horrific. Now, the important thing to know is that if you have any information on Cavalcanti, it is $25,000 now. So that's, was it $250,000, not too bad. So if you have any information, I'd hand him over. All right, so hopefully we find him. I trust they've got them. The U.S. Marshals are looking for him. It's not just regular. I mean, not that regular police aren't great, but I'm saying the U.S. Marshals have a very good record. I think they will find him. It would help if he had a phone. But all right. So my last little case number 3, is Danny Masterson, as you may or may not know from That 70s Show, a Scientologist, had inappropriate SA situations with 3 women, but due to one being, I guess, was his girlfriend, and people were like, well, we can't, it's harder to prosecute because you were in a relationship with him, which I thought we sort of were over, saying that, I mean, just you can say no anytime, but they chose to only go after him for 2, which, granted, they got convictions on. So that's great. And the judge gave him the maximum sentence. But people were asked to write like character references. And allegedly, on the grapevine, it's been saying that they thought these were like sealed. But this judge is not into sealing anything. And so if they were told they were going to be private, it was a mistake. Or they were never given any promise of it being private. And there was more, shall we say, pressure to provide a glowing character reference, maybe even if they didn't feel it. Why? So if you are on social media at all, if you pay attention to the pop culture, people like one of my favorites of the day is Daily Dose with Donna, only it's spelled Dana because she spells it the Israeli way. I love Daily Dose with Donna. Go follow her if you're interested in pop culture. But she was just one of the many pop culture channels talking about Ashton Kutcher, and I always have a hard time with her name, Mila Kunis. All right. Especially Ashton. They wrote a glowing character reference about how great he is and how he's so kind to everybody and how he would basically give the shirt off your back and he would never hurt a fly. Like, okay, but we know he did these things. I mean, he's been convicted. And so it just seems strange that they were going so far over the top with what they said. Now, they came out today with a thing saying, like, whatever, apologizing, walking it back a little. He was a friend, blah, blah, blah. All right. And that's not really the story. We're here about true crime. So do you guys remember in the 1990s and early 2000s that there was somebody called the Hollywood Ripper? There was a serial killer in Hollywood. I don't remember this. The serial isn't that, it's not so many, I guess, that, which is horrible that it would make the news, and it wasn't so close together that it was one of those things that ramped up the news. So this man, they did end up finding him. Right now he's 47. His name is Michael Garguglio. He was actually born in Illinois, in Glenview, which is a very nice suburb of Chicago. In fact, his first unaliving, they think, was his neighbor who was 18 years old, and that was in 1993. She was 18-year-old Trisha. I'm going to have to look. Pasasio. August 14th, she was found, maybe from the 13th, but she had been stabbed, and that's his sort of MO. Then he leaves soon after this. He's not a suspect, but maybe he felt things were getting hot. I don't know. He goes to LA. He then commits 2 murders, one in 2001 and one in 2008. And then another attempted murder. Most of these are his neighbors. They didn't say if he was neighbors with this woman who has to do with our story. So there's a 22-year-old on February 21st of 2001. 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin was going to go on a date with Ashton Kutcher, who then was just a little known actor. He wasn't a big deal at that time. Okay, 20 years ago almost. It is 20 years ago. What's weird is Ashton testified at the murder trial that he called, that they were friends but going on a date because now they were both single, like it was going to be something, but she wasn't his girlfriend. But other people said no, this was his girlfriend at the time. And he called her at 8:30. He said she was getting out of the shower. He called her 4 times in between when he arrived around 10:45. And he said he knocked on the door. Nobody answered. He looked in the window. He saw what he thought were wine stains on the floor, but that was not that big of a concern. And he figured because he was late that maybe she had gotten ticked off, left, whatever. So here's the thing. Allegedly, allegations and shade. He went in and saw, and apparently she was stabbed horrifically 47 times, almost decapitated to the point, and one big, deep, like horrible, and one hit her skull and took it out, a piece of it out like a puzzle piece. I mean, it would have been very clear that she was unalived and that there was no helping her if he would have walked in on this scene. Which allegedly, again, allegations and shade, he did. It's also alleged that he went out to his car then, totally freaked out, obviously, as one would be, in shock, shaking, called friends and maybe his representatives as to advice of what the hell do I do? Because we all know the first person on the scene, especially if your romantic interest is, you're going to be looked at. And he was just newly getting his, career off the ground. And selfishly, she was dead. And I guess this is all allegedly, that he was afraid about what would happen to his reputation. So one of the people he called allegedly was Danny Masterson. So now he testified that he did not know that she was dead, that he had no idea, and that he just went to a party then at somebody else's house and left. All right. Here's the thing. He testified that he didn't go in. So if he did go in and he had talked that night to Danny Masterson and to his representatives, but especially to Danny about what should he do, and Danny knows that he saw the body and didn't do anything and then lied in 2019 under oath. So it's perjury. I mean, we know who did it, so it's not like he's going to get blamed for this, but the fact that he lied under oath, would that be enough for Ashton Kutcher to feel like, I don't want the world to know that? I mean, would Danny Masterson say, I'm going to tell people you were there and you lied under oath, so why don't you do me this solid, dude, and write me this really nice character reference? That'd be great. We don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Again, like, subscribe, put it in the comments. I just didn't know that. So this Matthew, he was known as the Hollywood Ripper and the Chiller Killer. So I hadn't even heard of him. And he was arrested after his 3rd murder attempt. He murdered 2 people. His 3rd was June 6th. But when he was 2008, and then his trial wasn't until 2019. But crazy, and he still has to go on trial in Illinois. But what is really crazy is when they hauled him in and said, like, we have DNA that shows you did these murders. He said, I don't care if you have them on 10 people. That doesn't mean I killed those 10. And everyone's like, 10. So if you go to his Wikipedia page, it says 3 to 10 and 1 attempted, because we know the neighbor in Illinois, the 2 in California, the one attempt in California. So that's 3 plus 1 attempt plus maybe up to that many more. So I didn't know about that case. So it's kind of interesting, and it would be very sad if somebody did use the fact that their friend called them freaked out, and they would use that to get, I don't know, but people always say use what you got to get what you want. All right, Black Party. You guys, I am, let's see, how far am I? This is a book that I talked about in a previous live. It is about a suburban housewife who is at a Memorial Day block party, and she's having all kinds of trouble because she's been having a lot of stress, and she's been drinking too much, and her husband's very unhappy. Well, we find out this all has to do with what happened a year ago. So the next chapter after the beginning was Memorial Day the year previously. And in this one, she's not drinking too much and everything. She's like stressed out, but we find out that her sister's a realtor, and that previous year she had invited this new family to view a house, and she was pretty sure they were going to buy it. But right away, there were like sparks flying between the realtor, who is the sister of the main character. Her husband came over, and the new wife of that moving in. So we don't know who, we just know there's a murder. I don't know yet who got murdered. All I know is that like now they're introducing problems that could lead to a murder. So I know that there's this woman who within a year has developed a horrible drinking problem to the point that her husband is like ready to divorce her. I know that her sister is a realtor who also lives in the neighborhood, but introduced into the neighborhood somebody who might, her husband might cheat with her sister, and that would be upsetting to her. And maybe the sister's the killer, right? Because she's mad at the wife is going to cheat with her husband. Or there's also, with that new couple, they bring in a boy who's been in trouble, and we find out the main character who drinks too much, her daughter is like portrayed as a goth, sort of outside the lines a little bit, girl who's drawn towards this kid who seems to be like, he's a little bit older and he seems like a lot more trouble. So did he kill somebody? So now we've got all these characters that are potential killers. And the only thing I know about the murder is when it has that flashback scene from the year before where I meet the new characters and the conflicts introduced, that at the very end of it, everybody hears sirens and somebody hears the number and they say, oh, it's back to the present day. Sorry. They take you back to the present day, and at where our main character now, she has also gotten so wasted that her husband found her. They have a little discussion. She backs away from him. She's in heels, but drunk. So she falls into a kiddie pool full of water. So she's all wet. She goes home, lays down, passes out. Then we know that there's sirens and other people on another street who weren't invited to this fancy block party on Alton. They are listening to the scanner, kind of like the manhunt that Gisela K is listening to all the time. And they hear the code for homicide. Bum, bum, bum. So we know that whatever happens the previous year has to do with the homicide of this year's block party. And that's all I know so far. So I'll tell you more when I read more. But it's a really good book. And sometimes it's really nice to read about a non-real murder. So anyways, it's been over 30 minutes. Catch you guys tomorrow with real life crime updates. Bye.